Hello, I'm Darrin Thornton, and I'm an assistant professor of music at Penn State. Today I'm going to talk to you about graduate school. In most teachers' professional development, at some point, they begin to ponder what next. You may be at that point now, or you may be further away from that point at this time. However, there are things about considering graduate school that I think are very important, particularly for music teachers who have a bifurcated personality as both musicians, in most cases, and teachers, educators, and maybe other identities that you may have taken on, administrators, so forth. So I'm going to tell you the who, what, when, where, why, how, and how much of the graduate school application process. So if you don't remember anything else, I would like for you to consider your best fit. Who are you? And what is your best personal fit? Because that's what you're hunting for in your graduate school search. So the who, why, when, and how. So who are you? Why graduate school? Why now and when? Know your motivations. Know your future goals. Why is it that you're interested in going to graduate school now? There are good reasons, there are better reasons, and there are probably bad reasons. For example, I can't find a job may not be the best reason, but it is a valid reason. But that's for you to consider. Second issue you need to deal with is how do you wish to study? Consider your financial situation. Consider your personal circumstances. Consider your professional circumstances. Do you want to go online, traditional? By those circumstances, I mean, is your life complicated? Do you have a car loan, a house loan? Can you up and move? Are you bound by a geographical situation? Do you need to finish out a year? Did you just go on sabbatical last year and you owe a year back before you can leave? Those all paint the circumstances that surround your search at this time, and you need to consider that. Also, this online versus traditional is a big issue now in our field as those options have become more prevalent. So what's out there? There are master's programs, which I'll focus on here since I'm speaking to mostly an undergraduate population. And those would include a master's in music education, for example, or a master's in music, or a master's in education, or a master's in performance if you're in music, or any other possibilities that you may have an interest in if you're planning to come back to the K-12 teaching situation and you have expertise in areas outside of music. Then, of course, there are doctoral programs, and within our field, there are kind of two different areas. One is the PhD route, and the other would be a performance degree, a DMA, usually Doctor of Musical Arts. So those are kind of the nomenclature things that you need to think about when you're considering graduate degrees in our field. Then think about part-time or full-time. And again, residence or online. When you're considering where, I encourage you to think about size of the institution, where it's located, the reputation that it may have within its field, the opportunities for you there and in the surrounding area, and the placement history, all of which you can find online through your own ingenuity. And I encourage you to do that before you start speaking to people from those institutions. How to apply. This is one of the biggest mysteries about graduate school because it can be different institution to institution. But generally, the application timeline is about an 18-month cycle. At the 18-month period, you want to gather information from institutions and get familiar with what their application process is like. Some application processes are what we call centralized, meaning you send everything to one place and they make the decision there. In graduate school, that's a bit unusual, but there still are some that work that way. Most are decentralized, where you might send things to several places, and then that all gets collected in one part of the university, makes a certain type of decision about your basic admissions abilities, and then usually the home department makes the final decision as to whether you're the best fit for them. You need to take all of the required standardized tests and give yourself enough time that you can take it more than once, should you not like the first score that you get. Start gathering whatever portfolio data you may need for your degree program. If you're an artist, that's usually a large process of picking what of all your work you're going to use to represent yourself. As you're teaching in years prior, now that you're planning ahead, start videotaping your teaching. Audio and videotape your performances. Collect examples of good lesson plans and programs and repertoire lists that you can then use to build this portfolio. At the 12-month mark, you want to secure commitments from your recommenders. Many of you will have been out of school for 2 years or more before you start this process of applying to graduate school, and you want to make sure that you rekindle those connections with those folks, those professors that you had, because you want your recommendations to be from professors who had you in class and can speak to your academic work. You want to order your transcripts or figure out how that ordering of transcripts is going to work, because you will need to verify that you do have an undergraduate degree. And you want to start working on writing your application. Applications generally have a basic information form, a statement of purpose, a writing sample or teaching sample or performance recording. So you want to start working on those written parts, because those written parts represent you in a way that everything else can't. So this is your chance to explain to the school who you are and why you're the best fit for them. And most importantly, I strongly suggest that you visit schools if possible, to begin to narrow your list of programs at this 12-month mark. You might not meet with anyone, but just go get a sense of where that school is and what it would mean to live in that area. At the 9-month mark, applications are generally due, usually December, February-ish. So you want to have your taxes filed as early as possible, begin the FAFSA, if you remember what that is from your undergrad experience. Again, start visiting schools as you get more serious, and applying for all kinds of funding options. And then finally, hopefully you're in a position to have all of your options laid out on your table about within this period, maybe March between June. Those options should start rolling in as far as commitments for the next year. How much do you need for graduate school? The funding story runs parallel with the application timeline most of the time, starting at that 9-month forward point. One important thing you need to understand is that you need to ask each department you're applying for what types of funding opportunities they have and how you go about being considered for them. Just because you're aware of them doesn't mean that they're aware that you would like to be considered for them. And we don't always tell you that you need to do something in order to be considered. So make sure that you are proactive in that way. Determining your needs. There are many cost of living indices in your school location that you can use to figure out what a general cost of living might be. Many of the websites of the institutions will also print that type of information. Be sure to include not only your tuition if you're paying any in fees, but books, supplies, equipment, your current obligations, including your car loan, house payment, previous loan debt. Schools often have a cost of education estimator that will put all of those factors in and give you kind of a good ballpark estimate of what your cost of education would be year by year. There are many types of funding that you need to be aware of, and this name game is very important. There are fellowships, which are based on merit. There are assistantships that are a combination of merit and work that you provide to the institution. There are scholarships that are usually based on merit but are a smaller amount of funding than fellowships. And then, of course, there are loans, for which we're all probably pretty familiar. Determining the best offer, then, includes looking at the type of funding that you might have received between institutions. The pecking order, sort of, for funding is fellowships, assistantships, scholarships, and loans. Fellowships, you get to work on your work more so than doing work for the institution. Assistantships is kind of a nice marriage between scholarships, just aren't enough, and loans you have to pay back. So what are the expectations also of that funding? Are you teaching? Are you working in some sort of laboratory or grading papers for theory, or what you might be doing to fulfill those obligations? And what type of scholarship production is required? If you're on a fellowship, it is expected that you are producing scholarship that you are sharing, which represents your institution. Also ask about the health insurance or other benefits that are associated with that type of funding. Then you need to be true to your best fit considerations: who, what, when, where, and why, as you consider which offer is best for you. As you think about graduate school, don't think about it lightly. It's a major investment, both to you as a student, an interruption of your life or the continuation of your life or the transition in your life, and the institution that's accepting you, funding you, and supporting you through that time. So Best of luck in your endeavors.